Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Adventures Travel Club television show. We find ourselves actually at a salt mine outside of Krakow in Poland. Betty, have you ever been down a salt mine before?
Oh, sure. I spent years up in Siberia working in the salt mines.
Do they have salt in Siberia?
I think so. It's some kind of mines.
Just
mind your own business. No, really. No, I've never been in a salt mine, but we have seen the salt so much here in California. You know, out by the beaches where it's dried up and they do harvest salt.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the way they do it. A little bit different here.
Yeah, I'll say they do.
Way down into the earth. In fact, I think we went down 300-400, maybe further than that feet. To get down to these various levels that they have. This is a very interesting place. I had read about it and had seen pictures of it before, and I was just delighted that we were going to have the opportunity to get in this little cars that you see right here to the elevator. There is actually a two-story elevator. There's one on the bottom and then one on the top, and we're going to get in there. But first of all, we're going to listen very carefully because our guide has
it's
a
hard
very
to
thick
understand
accent.
a little bit.
Only one elevator for visitors who finished visiting and for transportation of special groups to the first level. Thank you.
Well, as we mentioned before, the elevator is in two parts. There's a top floor and a bottom floor on this elevator, and some of us got on the bottom part, and others had to walk up a little staircase and get on the top part. And but before we do that, we got to let the other people out.
Yeah, but they do have an up and down.
Well, that's where it was going, up and down, right?
Not just the top part.
Right.
The
It's going to be a little dark down here, so
yes.
I know that you'll be able to see. And I took a lot of tape in here, but we're not going to show it all on the show. But just sort of the highlights of some of the things that we are going to see. And believe me, this was really amazing once we got down there.
Seven persons upstairs. Seven. No?
To tak. The ladies,
And away we go.
Especially from you.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
I'm here, Marv.
Yeah, I know. So I got you.
Finish.
Thank you.
Follow me, please. No way. No other way, actually. Yes, of course.
Well, once we got off the elevator, there, of course, was quite a bit of walking. And these hallways are divided sort of in compartments, and there's always a door at the end of them. And it was really interesting, I thought, because the ceiling was kind of low. And if you look there on the side, you see the salt right there. And I was surprised because when we get down and we're going to see some sculptures, and I thought, oh, well, it'll just be really crystal clear. But the salt is not crystal clear. The salt actually is sort of sandy looking.
It was no other possibility necessary to explain here, because it was too many groups at the shaft. Good afternoon to you. I have a honor and pleasure to be your guide. My full name is Andrzej Zieliński. Andrew Zieliński is Polish name, of course. Difficult. Yes.
We can't remember Andrzej.
Yes. Okay. And here is the depth. We descended by elevator, of course, for the groups who descend on foot. There are almost 400 steps. from the top. We will have almost the same to the deepest level for visiting, but these steps will be in sections. They will be divided. And we are 64 meters under the ground. It's about 200 feet. This first level. Here there are 9 levels in this mine. The maximal depth 327 meters is over 1,000 feet under the ground. It's also below Baltic Sea level. As Wieliczka is located 250 meters over sea level. And we will descend to the depths 135 meters over 400 steps. Feet, I'm sorry. Feet. From this depth we will go up by elevator. Follow me, please.
Well, Betty, these mines have been in existence for quite some time, haven't they?
Well, you figure 600, at least 600 years.
Yeah, that's a long time
And-
to be taking a lot of salt out, isn't
And
it?
they've been taking it out on a regular basis, of course not as sophisticated as now.
Yeah. No, in fact, they used horses down here at one time.
So it was in second half of 13th century. It's one of oldest still working mines in the world, but now it's not exact exploitation, not common exploitation of salt here, but only on this way that because it's water from different underground springs coming to the enter to the mine. It's necessary to pump it up. This water, from this water is produced a brine in other place. Between Krakow and Wieliczka, there are only the holes drilled in the ground. Under the ground is salt. And this brine is repumped to the salt works in Wieliczka, of which this brine is produced salt. In special vacuum installation. Follow me. No light. Darker today. And we will visit a distance maximally about 2.5 of kilometer, not even 2 miles of walking it will be. But all the lengths of all the places in the mine, in all the levels, 9 levels, is a distance between 200 and 300 kilometers, almost 200 miles. It's almost a distance from Krakow to Warsaw, for comparison. It's a huge mine, of course. But the area of the mine is long about 7 to 8 kilometers, and this wide about 1.5 maximally. Here is a chamber from 18th century with a monument to Nicolaus Copernicus, to astronomer who lived in Poland. He was born in Toruń town on Wisła River in 1473, and in 1973 was placed to him this monument in 5th centenary of his birth, made of salt, also for the reason that he visited this mine in the end of 15th century. So our visiting, traditions of visiting of these mines are very long. They began in the end of 15th century. Figures are from later periods, from 19th century, and the floor also made of
Chandelier.
chandelier is made of wood, exactly, but it was decorated with crystal salt. It is purest kind of salt, which is in our mine, but not in tourist route, in so-called crystal cave. This crystal salt containing exactly 99.98% of pure salt.
Well, as we can see over the centuries, there have been a lot of carvings in these various chambers. And as I stated before, I thought it was going to look like just white, like regular salt does, but it doesn't. There's about 25%, I think, sand in the salt that is here. But if you were to hold a candle or a light behind the figurines that have been carved there, the statuary, then you'll see it's really actually transparent. We're going to see that a little bit later on.
You know, you lose some of the effect of it, really, because of the darkness. It's incredible how it's in the walls.
Concerning to the discovery of salt in Poland, to the historical person, Princess Kinga Kunegunda, the same Christian name, who was a daughter of King of Hungary. She was married with Krakowian Prince Bolesław. She lived in 13th century, 700 years ago, and also to the origins of salt mines in Wieliczka and in Bochnia. You have also second salt mine, which is located 20 kilometers to east from here, in direction to Tarnów. And this princess was married with this Krakowian prince, and according to the legend, she wanted to give special wedding gift for everybody in Poland. She was probably salt, because salt was very precious in the past. She was very important for the reason of preservation of food, like fishes, meat, or other. And she received from her father one of salt mines in Hungary as a dowry, and threw her engagement ring to the shaft of this mine in Hungary. When she came to Poland, she ordered to dig a well near Krakow. Under the ground in this well was discovered rock salt. And the first piece of rock salt, of this salt, was transported up by the man who dug this well, this ring. So this ring was carried from Hungary to Poland in a miraculous underground way with salt. This is legend. Here there are statues representing 3 miners. One is given a piece of salt with a ring to the princess, and 2 knights, Polish and Hungarian.
So you can attribute some of this to the Hungarian princess. Now, as we go into another chamber, we see here that in the very early days they used to use torches as they went in and crawled in these areas. And I think there were a lot of explosions that happened during that time
sure.
too.
Look at the crawling like that.
From time to time appear crevices in the walls, so this gas enters to the mine from the deposit. So miners in the past used lamps with open flame. So there were different explosions very often, and fires too. So for this reason it was necessary to burn this gas. It was done especially by old miners with big experience. They crawled in the lowest places because this gas is lighter in comparison with the air, always occurs in the top of the cave-ins, of chambers or corridors, and they used special torches for it, for burning of this gas.
You just sort of wonder, so many centuries gone by, how many people actually lost their lives there. There were stalactites there too. We could see that from the ceiling a little bit. And we entered now into a huge big chamber, a great big room. And you can't see it off in the distance because there's just not enough light down here. But they had a little model over here of how this worked, how they used the ropes and how they used the horses would go in one direction to make this device work. And then, of course, what that did, it sort of operated like an elevator, so that it would go down or it would come up depending on the direction that the horses were going. So it could have been going one direction, pulling the salt up in a bucket or whatever, and then the other direction you go ahead and put it down. And I imagine some of the miners probably, that was their transportation as well, going up and down in those buckets that they had. But this is quite a, as I say, it was quite a large room that we were in here, and again, because there isn't enough light, and they seemed like the Polish didn't want to light up too much in there. But one of the things he did mention is that they had to be very careful because so many people, now tourists, were going through there.
Monument to King of Poland Kazimierz the Great, who lived in 14th century, who gave 4 salt mines in Wieliczka and in Bochnia, so-called Krakow Salt Works. It was very big industrial enterprise. For example, in this mine in Wieliczka exactly, in 16th century, worked about 800 people. It was one of the biggest industrial enterprises in Europe, ancient Europe in this time. He gave a special miners regulation. It was in 1368. In 1968, this chamber was called Kazimierz the Great's chamber. It was reconstructed because it was in bad condition. Bardzo proszę, ja poczekam teraz. And was placed this monument to the king because this year in 1968 was 6th centenary of this event.
Did you know that guy, King Casimir?
Sure, a good friend of mine.
I'd heard of his name before, but that's the first time I've ever seen a statue of him, and in salt, as a matter of fact. Well, now we get another look here to see how this device worked, and again how it would pull the bucket up or the bucket down of salt, and there we can see it right there.
Even with that showing us like that, it's very hard to figure out exactly how it took place.
There was it was the same kind of salt in Chapel of Kinga, which we'll visit later.
Okay. Now, this salt, is it pretty compact? Does it have to be cleansed with the sand and stuff?
This salt is very impure, of course.
Yes,
It
okay.
contains about 25% of sand.
Okay, mostly sand.
Yes.
Now
No,
what's-
mostly salt.
As we kept progressing in these chambers, we kept going further down, down, down. And of course, it was interesting to see in these chambers, there are all sorts of different carvings. This one happened to be a carving of a gnome.
In the depths, 64 meters under the ground, about 200 feet. We descended on about 170 steps to the depths 90 meters. It's about 300, almost 300 feet under the ground. The second upper level, because later will be second lower. Second upper dedicated to Markowski brothers. Markowski brothers, Joseph and Thomas, lived in 19th century. They worked here, and their works, statues mostly, are in a Chapel of Kinga, which we'll visit in a few minutes. Here's a small chamber from 19th century in which they were placed in 1963 probably. Statues made of salt representing gnomes working in the mine, in the old mine. Here are represented different kinds of transportation of salt in 19th century. And concerning to the dwarves, there are necessary to remark there are different legends between coal miners, especially in the Katowice region in Upper Silesia. They believe that very often with the miners in the time of night shift, because these mines work per 3 shifts around the clock. In the mine work the dwarves, they help to the miners, and production is bigger thanks to them. Next will be a chapel of Holy Cross. Here they were probably the end of 19th century, transported from different other places from the chapel, which probably were destroyed by the treasure. The statues. So these 2 statues are made of salt down. They were transported from one of the chapels in first level, and the statue of Jesus Christ is made of linden. It is salt. This statue of Jesus Christ is made of linden wood. It is soft kind of wood, and it absorbs salt from the earth. It is good condition. It is from 17th century, so it is almost 300 years. And I informed you concerning the exploitation of salt in the past. So here there are marks of wedges. Here they were cut for vertical blocks of salt from the walls. Here 1963, over 60 years, the chamber after exploitation. Exploitation was finished here in 1862. From this place, it was of course a big lump of salt. Miners extracted from this place about 20,000 tons of salt. Later, these empty chambers adapted for a church. They were made steps made of salt, a floor, rock salt. They were made chandeliers decorated with crystal salt. Statues and bas reliefs representing life of Jesus Christ. They were made by Markowski brothers, Antoni Wyrodek, and Mieczysław Kluzek, author of this group representing of great legend concerning to the this history, origins of history of salt mines in Wieliczka and in Boki. This chamber is long 54 meters.
Well, Betty, I think this was probably one of the most spectacular parts of the salt mine here, to see this chapel that the 2 brothers had built. I mean, this was incredible. You think there's huge. I mean, it's as big as many churches, you know,
Yeah,
and all carved out of salt.
I was trying to figure out when he talked about the meters, about how many football fields that would be in it, but because they have light in this, everything becomes so much clearer for us to see and to understand. Coming down in the narrow corridors where it was so dark and you had to just pick up certain statues along the way, but here is like the finished product, and it and then parts of it shows the translucency that you talked about with the light in back of it, so that you see, even
Did you
though
see there? Yeah, that's true.
because they look so dark before, and you can't quite comprehend that they would be that way when you put the light in back of them. But this was. We keep using that word incredible all the time, but you know, for
Well,
every
we've been to some incredible places.
I was
and this
going to
is one of
say,
them.
every
Yeah.
situation suits that adjective. It's incredible. You wouldn't believe this if you, even now, as you're watching, you can't grasp the enormity of this.
It is, and to think that, I mean, even the stairs, as he said, the stairs are salt, the floor is salt, the chandeliers are made of salt, and all of the carvings that we see here, of course, the whole depiction of the life of Christ that is carved into these walls, and then some of it, of course, is illuminated, and other parts of it are not illuminated. And that's sort of, I guess, what gives it its kind of a mysterious look to it.
Look up
you know.
there now, isn't
Yeah,
that
the nativity.
yes?
Uh-huh.
Isn't that just beautiful?
It is. It is.
We
I
were-
really wish that they would have had more light on everything. But he had explained during the tour that they had to be very careful because there are some of the things can deteriorate simply by the moisture from the breath of so many people, breathing, going through these places. And I would imagine that maybe the light might have something to do with it too. I don't know. Of course, they didn't discourage you using flash cameras at all. You see people doing that, but
This was pretty well lit, I thought. Of course, you compare it with the way what we had coming down, which was nothing. I mean, you did a good job on that because there wasn't enough light.
There wasn't an awful lot of light in the place, but
look at that
we got
now.
what we could. Yeah, and now
And
you can
that's
see there's
salt.
Yeah, right.
I keep thinking
That's salt.
that's not marble. That's salt.
That's salt. But it does look like marble. I mean,
Yes.
it gives you that feeling because of the looks like the weight and the enormity of it all. But it is really beautiful. It's really something. As I say, I'd seen pictures of this before, and I talked to Polish friends of mine that said, when you come to Poland, you have to see this. I go, what in the world? Why don't I go see a salt mine? Come on! But when we got here, this was just magnificent.
This was not on our itinerary, and I did have someone send me the same information, and so I gave it to the wholesaler and asked to have please put this on our trip. And he didn't know about it, so you can believe it's going to be on other people's trips from now on.
I would suspect so,
Yes.
because it is really
Yeah.
something, and I'm certainly glad that we had the opportunity to go through here. While we're looking at this particular chapel, I want to explain because we don't have time on this show to show everything that we saw, because we were down in the mine for a few hours down there. It was really quite something. But we'll see just sort of a glimpse of one of the huge chambers, and it didn't have any light in it at all. But it was one that the Nazis had taken over. Of course, the Nazis took this all over during World War II, and they had some slave labor that was working in part of the area. Again, we're not going to be able to see it right here, but there is sort of a monument there. We'll see a Star of David that is there, and they actually had some ammunition and that type of things, and they were manufacturing.
Did they do
war
airplanes?
materials
Didn't
down
they
there.
do
I
airplane
believe it
parts
was, yeah.
there? I
Yeah.
think that was for airplane parts. Yeah.
So this really had quite some significance, and you can think of how many centuries, of course, that the mine has been here. And also, we will go into a couple of places. Again, I apologize because there's no light there, but there are some lakes, some underground lakes that are way, way, way down here, 300, 400, 500 feet under the ground, and of course they are the small salt lakes, I guess is what we would probably call them. And at one time, when tourists were going through here, they actually, to get from one side to the lake to the other, they actually used boats to get through the mine. And it just really has a fascinating history.
Imagine working down under those circumstances to do that carving down so far down below the earth and with not a great deal of light. Of course, they had to have some light, or
the
they couldn't have done any
lanterns,
of
I
it. But
suspect,
lanterns, yeah. And the workmanship. I mean, this would be in a cathedral,
And this is just the after effects. I mean, this was the main thing was to get the salt out of there.
Yes.
And then but to see that the workmen actually then created these works of art, these beautiful, beautiful places that we have seen in there, and especially this chapel here is just
down in the
breathtaking.
bowels of the earth.
Yeah, it's just absolutely breathtaking to see this. And now you can see some of the statuary that is lit either from the bottom or from the back, and you can see now, like Betty had mentioned, it's translucent. You can see the detail now. I think this was really something.
Yeah.
Just magnificent.
We all came out of there. Oh my mama, isn't it something?
It was really something.
Now we will visit the chamber in which is an artificial salt lake. It is a saturated solution in lower part of this chamber, containing about 97 to 90, 27 to 29% maximally. But it was first a chamber after exploitation in which it was left salt pillar for the reason of better security of the roof. And to the lowest part, it was made in 19th century. Later, before the First World War, was pumped in saturated solution to this place. It was made artificial salt lake. Not only here, they were made artificial salt lakes in different places of this mine. Because the tourist route was other, it was necessary to obtain a tourist route more attractive for visiting. Also, they were used in bigger chambers. They were the bigger salt lakes, special boats or ferry boats for transportation of visitors to work. And in 1944, this factory was began production, but it worked for a very short time because very quickly to Wieliczka and Krakow appeared an Eastern Front, Soviet Army, and Soviet installation equipment was transported back to Bohemia and Germany.
Well, the last chamber that we just visited, as you said, that's of course where the war material was made and then shipped back to Germany. And of course, we couldn't get out without going by souvenirs.
Oh no, that's all part of it.
Things,
Yeah,
look.
yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. Look at the amber
Yeah,
there.
I see that one tree. Well, mine. I bought one similar to that.
I thought you did.
Yeah, I like to buy those little trees where I go, and because those are something that maybe my kids. One of the few things my kids might like.
If you're interested in any of the trips that we have coming up, simply give Betty a call at
488-7443.
And that's just about all the time that we have this week. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Bye bye.